Greetings! Welcome to the 21st Early Access Update for Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful! So what have we got for you this week? We have a brand new environment, the Friendly 45 range, named and in some ways designed as an homage to the incredible backyard range that the YouTuber Hickok45 has. I must admit, I have been, ever since finding that channel when I was beginning research for this game, I fell in love with his range. I wish I could have such a thing myself, but, you know, I live in California, don't have space for such a thing. But having it in a virtual context or something similar is the next best thing. So what have we got? Well, we have got a bunch of new targets, but targets alone aren't what's important about this week. Instead, what we have is what I would call the first full implementation of the ballistic system that I have been working on. We've had thus far air drag and bullet drop and things like that, but we haven't had nuanced and interesting penetration behavior for projectiles. So that's in. So to take a look at this, let's go ahead and pull open our options panel to make sure that we have bullet trails enabled. Let's turn those on. And while I've got this open, I'm going to show you a new feature of both the options and the ammo panel, which is that we can hit this lock button, and now when we release the panel, it is now frozen in the air. Very convenient for changing things. So let's go ahead and grab ourselves a carbine here and take a look at what I'm talking about. So the idea behind this system, and this is something that's been partially in and now is getting closer to being completed this week, is that every object in the game is made of a given physical material, whether that's wood, metal, stone, etc. So let's go ahead and jump on over here to the wood for our target stand here. So I take some shots. Oh, we actually have to put this off of safe. As you can see, based on the angle we strike at, we actually get some interesting deflection behaviors, and the round is being significantly slowed as it's moving through. This is an FMJ round that's probably still tuned to be a little bit too sharp, so it's still retaining a lot of its velocity going through our wood board here. Obviously, the steel is just going to stop it dead. You can also see that our steel targets, just in this scene for now, eventually all of them, actually have some markers when we strike them, so it's much easier to see that even on the distant ones, as long as you got an optic mounted on where you've struck. So let's walk back over to our table here, pop our carbine down, grab our 22, and take a look at one of our new targets. I'm going to go ahead and disable our bullet trails. Now, this clay pot here, we've got a large and a small one, is the first, and what I want to do basically is a series of really, really nuanced destruction behaviors for an object. This is multi-stage destructible, meaning that if we shoot it, it blasts apart into several pieces. Those pieces can be further shattered, and then those pieces themselves can be destroyed with a bunch of particle effects. Now, what's special about these and all of the destructible targets I intend to implement is that these aren't just sort of universal hit behaviors. The various sorts of forces enacted on the target by the projectile are actually being used to calculate exactly what should be happening. So in the case of the pot, it actually needs a certain amount of impact before it shatters in each stage, which is why it's taking 2 shots of the 22 here, whereas with our 45, we actually hit it, only takes 1. We've got a second target in here, which is a can of soda, which I've applied a similar sort of thought process to, but instead of shattering, what this does is that it has several different ways that the soda inside can leave it. We can put a small hole in it, say with a 22 here, sort of spray out. And if I'm not actually holding on to that, oh, there it goes windmilling. You'll see it sprays about. Whereas, now this won't happen with every 45, so this may take me a few to get the behavior I want, because it's very angle dependent and there's a little bit of randomness in it. I'm going to spawn lock that soda can, grab myself another. Okay, just got a hole out of that one. I'm going to do this as many times as it takes. Come on. Oh, whoops, I forgot. I'm trying to do this with FMJ rounds, whereas what I really want is an expanding round. So I'm going to pull up my ammo panel here. We're going to lock that. And I'm going to show you a new feature of the ammo panel, which is that if we have a round selected that either a magazine in our hand or a gun in our hand is using, so in the case of this, we'll have a magazine here. You can see there's FMJ in there. We can hit jacketed hollow point and then hit the load held mag width. Boom! Hollow points. Let's see if we can get a can to do what we want here. Nope. Just holes. Boom! Blown apart. And we get a chunk of it. And then there's a higher destruction state where instead of getting a sort of directional soda splash, it just explodes omnidirectionally, and that'll happen if you hit it with, with a rifle cartridge. So yeah, so this panel should also hopefully make it easier for you to very quickly sort of load mags and play around with the various sorts of rounds, especially now that they're becoming more relevant with the new system. Turn on our bullet trails. Let's go ahead and give ourselves some tracers. Turn the bullet trails off. Got tracers now. Wonderful. So yeah, so just fair warning, I have not tuned every cartridge type in the game perfectly with this ballistic system. It's going to be an iterative process, and as I make new destructible targets that respond to different physical parameters of the impact, I'll probably find some stuff that needs to be tuned and retuned again. But at least now we're at the point where penetrations will actually happen. You can actually shoot things through soft cover if you have a round that isn't an expanding round like a hollow point. So yeah, so give that a shot. You'll notice there are a whole bunch of steel targets. You'll notice the backfield isn't quite filled out yet. I still have a bunch of work to do on this scene. Let's see if we can hit that. Nope. Helps to actually increase the magnification. Come on, Anton. Beautiful. So yeah, one thing also to note, if you're trying this out, especially if you've got a 970, please let me know how performance is on this scene. I've been scared for a while of doing a woodland scene like this, because this is, at least on my system, about at the sort of comfortable performance range. If you've got too many shattered things around you, the physics impact on the CPU may become a little too onerous. There's still some places I can optimize, but as I'm beginning to build this scene, please let me know what the performance is like for you. And if it's a bit jittery, I apologize. It's a new scene, and I'm trying to put more on screen and more physics active stuff at once in a scene than I've done yet. So it is still a little intensive. So yeah, well, enjoy the new scene, and I'm going to jump out of VR now and talk about the ballistics. Oh, before I go, I just wanted to mention, just like the soda can, the clay pots are indeed spawn lockable. So if you want to throw them up for yourself to shoot at, or just grab two of them and smash them together, make sure not to hit your actual controllers together, you can do so. So anywho, jumping out of VR now.
Yo! So let's talk about ballistic systems for a bit. Just to give you a little background, those of you who didn't see my sort of prior devlog talking about the sort of origin point for the system, this system sort of predates H3 by a good 5 or 6 months, actually. It's something that I've been tinkering with for a long time, and has been frustrating but worthwhile. Probably the single biggest programming challenge I've ever had. It sort of originally started from a desire to have a model for projectiles in a game that could accommodate the notion of collateral damage. That rounds don't just stop or in many ways become irrelevant when they miss a target, but can have all sorts of interesting behaviors in terms of ricochets and in terms of penetrating through things and possibly striking things that one wouldn't want within a game space. And so, yeah, it started from there. And how to put this? Something that I learned, I'd say, in the more recent period, in the past couple months, is that in real life, there really aren't any good analytical models for projectile penetration of arbitrary materials. It's something that you'll find tons of data on ballistics gelatin, because that's the thing people, who make actual bullets care about, ballistic trauma and ballistic stability, things like that at various ranges. But if you were to ask, well, exactly how much cardboard can a 45 ACP go through, that you're not going to find that unless someone has actually stacked up that amount of cardboard and shot at it and recorded data from it. And I did not know this when I started making this system. In that sort of engineer's hubris kind of way, I was like, surely this is computable. Which it totally isn't. And I'm sort of glad I didn't know that, because I might not have even tried to do this. But I committed, and I've continued to work on it. And where it sort of started was me obsessive compulsively collecting information for spreadsheets. And so I dug through, catalogs for various sorts of materials suppliers, Wikipedia, a whole bunch of different places, to gather physical parameters for as many common materials as I thought would be relevant. Things like the sort of fracture toughness of materials, their ultimate tensile yield strength, density, sort of stiffness and elasticity parameters, how internally homogeneous they are, which is a sort of notion of internal roughness, and collating them and normalizing them to usable scales. And then on the projectile side, I have both the sort of physical materials the projectile's made out of, its dimension, its drag coefficients, and as well as some abstractions for sort of handling sort of the extreme side cases of expanding and hyperpenetrating rounds. And the idea, at least, of this system is that I have what I would call a sort of two-phase simulation going on. There's sort of two critical moments to think about in regards to bullet penetration and sort of terminal ballistics. There's the moment of initial contact, where what we want to know is we have a round of a given material, shape, velocity, and angle relative to the surface. And we want to know whether at that moment, whether the pressure that is occurring between the material and the round destroys or deforms the round, whether the round is capable of sort of overcoming the molecular force of the material such that it actually starts penetrating into it beyond a sort of irrelevant cavitation on its surface, or whether some combination of the two happens. And then following that, after that tick within the simulation, if we have a round that's inside a material that is moving through it, we want to know whether the density and the sort of elasticity of that material and its sort of internal pressure retards the bullet such that it stops, or whether it can continue on traveling with some sort of fraction of its velocity. And of course there are a couple other sort of subtler effects I've tried to model, like the way in which if a round leaving an elastic rough surface isn't leaving exactly sort of perpendicular to that surface, but at an angle, the drag on it's going to be asymmetric, so that should cause it to tumble, that should cause it to divert. A whole bunch of really subtle stuff. Also known as a whole bunch of places to have little subtle vector math bugs that I've been fighting on with for weeks and weeks. But the entire purpose, the idea of it as far as H3 is concerned, is this: how does a projectile react to an object that has been struck? And instead of sort of creating just this very simple matrix of like, hey, handgun rounds do this, rifle rounds do this, and me manually making those connections. The goal is to sort of create a system that just yields useful output in a generic sense. An impact of a certain force with these parameters has occurred, and materials just react to those forces. The material shouldn't have to know it's been hit by a 9mm round. It should merely know that it has received an impact of a sword or is receiving internal damage from an object moving through it. And the goal for this, beyond the sort of targets I've already created, is to be able to do more interesting composite destructible toys. Like, I want to do a microwave oven with a glass sheet on front and some plastic casing, metal on the inside, maybe a glass platter on the inside, and be able to get, nuanced and interesting reactions from impacts with that. And I want to be able to have Clunk actually be made of stuff so that the whole sort of steel target sort of configuration for a robot is sort of unnecessary, and instead there are different sorts of tools being used against him will be able to accomplish certain things. Flying robots, you actually want a round that's going to impact a lot of force to actually kinematically destabilize them in the air, whereas with a sort of tank-style robot, you want a precise armor penetrator to try to get at the sensitive systems that are beneath its armor. So that's the goals, for why I'm doing all of this. It's been a huge headache. It's tons of data. It's very difficult to tune. It's never, I should always, how to put this? I want to make sure that everyone has realistic expectations with it. There will always be certain circumstances where this will not map to reality. This is so much simpler of a simulation than what one would actually require to properly simulate this. Terminal ballistics in every single game, no matter how simulatory, even the simulators made for the military, they might be super accurate in certain contexts where enough data has been gathered to fit a curve to, but outside of those cases where someone has really manually matched it to observed empirical data on penetration, it's going to vary heavily, because there's just so much happening in such a small fraction of a second with a real kinetic impact like that. So this is to say, the goal is not fully realism as such, but nuanced and interesting, with the sort of archetypal relationships being intact between round types and targets. So, but if you encounter anything super bizarre, as always, let me know. It's going to take me, weeks and many more targets before I'm sure I'm happy. I'll let's be frank, I'll probably never stop futzing with this. But it should be in a more and more stable and reliable state as I make more targets. So yeah, well, have fun playing with it. I definitely recommend having bullet trails on when you're playing around in the new friendly 45 range, so you can just see what's happening with those impacts. Just the physical parameters for materials aren't in the other scenes yet. That'll be rolling out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I want to make sure they're tuned and performant enough in that scene before I start making global changes everywhere. So yeah, well, have fun this week. Before I go, some other quick bug fixes. That irritating bug where you drop a mag out of a weapon with the bolt being locked back and it would unlock should be fixed. Let me know if it still acts weird. My hot fix to fix the MP5K actually was what broke everything else. Well done, Anton. And some M79 quirks have been fixed. So yeah, well, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.